Oh, my phone, no wonder I've been late. There you go. Okay, it's 4 o'clock. I'm gonna call this meeting of the South Thompson Select Board to order. First matter of business is a public hearing to determine whether the structure is located at 93 Island Road, map 2, lot 75 on the town's tax map, and 98 Island Road, map 2, lot 76, are dangerous or a nuisance within the meaning of 17 Maine Revised Statutes annotated section 2851, and or in violation of Title 30A of the Maine Revised Statute annotated section 372 under Maine's junkyard law. I'm gonna start by turning it over to our attorney, Kristen Collins, who's joining us by Zoom. And Kristen's gonna explain kind of where we're at and the applicable law and what we're trying to accomplish here.
Thank you. Everyone can still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a hearing under the dangerous building statute, which, as was just referenced, is Title 17, Section 2851. That's principally what we're here for, while we are also determining that this property constitutes a junkyard. That does not require a hearing, although that is sort of all of the issues are intertwined here. The town has filed a lawsuit in the Knox County District Court, also seeking adjudication that the buildings and the properties are a junkyard and that the structures on the property are dangerous buildings. That's one way to go about this, but the other way to go about this, and they can be done in parallel, is for the town select board to hold a hearing as we're doing tonight and adjudge the buildings and structures to be dangerous, which gives the owners a very clear requirement to address those dangerous conditions. And if it's not done by the stated deadline, that the town would have the authority to go in and address those issues in order to make the buildings as safe as possible. And just to cover some basic facets of the statute, under the statute, they call it a dangerous building, but building is actually defined more broadly to include a building or structure or any portion of a building or structure or any wharf, pier, pilings, or any portion of a wharf, pier, or pilings thereof that is or was located on or extending from land within the boundaries of the municipality. So that is a pretty broad standard that would include not just the physical buildings on this property, but also the wharf, the decking, and those pieces of the property that are actually of the most, extreme and pressing concern as far as I see them. The standard to adjudge a structure to be a dangerous building is that the building is structurally unsafe, unstable, or unsanitary, constitutes a fire hazard, is unsuitable or improper for the use or occupancy to which it is put, constitutes a hazard to health or safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, or abandonment, or is otherwise dangerous to life or property. And so as select board consider this property, that's the standard that you're to apply. And it doesn't have to be a occupied structure. The fact that a structure is there and available for people to trespass on even could be enough for it to be considered dangerous. So that's the standard. In terms of the process, we will have the code enforcement officer, Terry Baines, go through a presentation with some photographs of the property. And then the board probably would like to hear from the public on this issue and that standard. And then when the board is ready, you would go into deliberation. And I've provided a draft order. You are free to make changes to that order, to add things to it. If you think anything is inaccurate, to change it. And once you've gone through that process, you would take a vote. If the building is found to be a dangerous building, at least under this draft order, you could provide more time, less time, whatever you would like to do. But under the draft that's in front of you, the owners would have 14 days to remove the damaged wharf and decking and address that fuel pump and line that are in the water, and to board up the buildings. And then another 30 days, well, not another 30 days, but 30 days from the date of this order tonight to provide a plan to address any remaining dangerous conditions on the property. And if they don't comply with either or both of those deadlines, then the select board would have the authority to hire whatever contractors that are needed at town expense to go in there and do that work. You would then, once the work is completed and you have a total, bill the property owner for that amount. They have 30 days to pay in full. If they do not pay in full, the town would assess the costs against the property as special tax on the next tax warrant that goes out. So we're talking next year. So that is the process. And I guess that brings us now to Terry's presentation, which I will put on my screen and hopefully I can share.
Question, can I interrupt 1 second?
Yes.
I just want to point out that Attorney Jim Strong is present and he has indicated he's representing. I didn't know if you were aware he was here.
That's great. And I also think that probably covers it, but I did want to acknowledge that notice had been provided to the company that's the nominal title owner of this property, and Attorney Strong's presence would seem to suggest that they received that notice. So we'll state that for the record. And before we go into any comments from the public, obviously we'd want to let the property owner or their attorney speak as to the presentation. Okay, let me find my right screen. Okay, I've just gone over the definition of a building and of the standard. I'll give everybody 1 second to read that again.
You make the print any larger?
Let me see. I'm wondering about that. Is that any better?
Much.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into the history. Carrie, I'll go ahead and go through this if you don't mind.
Not at all.
No. So this official process started with a notice of violation that was issued by the code enforcement officer to the owners on June 6th that detailed that the buildings had been abandoned, that 93 Island Road was an attractive nuisance due to missing windows and loose building materials, that there were wood debris, broken down generator and machinery on a float, and junk traps strewn about the property. My understanding is some of those traps, if not all, have since been removed. Were broken floats, tires, styrofoam that is actually washing ashore that's broken off, some junk wood, which is doing the same, and other miscellaneous debris. And then there's this partially attached submerged fuel pump, which we have determined has fuel in the line and in the tank. There's a large hole in the building, and the ramp serving the wharf is mostly submerged and partially detached. The walkway is broken and there's other debris strewn about. That notice of violation required the owners to, within 10 days, remove all the junk, secure the buildings from entry, remove the fuel tank, wharf, damaged ramp, and floats, and also required them within 30 days to submit a plan from a contractor to address the dangerous conditions. And none of these things were complied with. And as I mentioned, the town has filed a civil complaint and a motion for a temporary restraining order in the court on September 11th that has not yet been acted on. So now we're just going to go through a series of pictures, and as Terry is both the code enforcement officer and the person who has spent the most time looking at this property, I will ask her to describe which portion of the property we're seeing and what we're seeing that's of concern.
This picture was, I believe, taken from the water, Sue. I think
Yeah.
Sue took this one. You can see the doors hanging off. There's no doors. There's probably the doors in the water, and it's just quite a mess. And the door up, the sliding door, you can see that doesn't shut. It's all, an attractive nuisance for who knows, might want to go in there, some kids looking around, and it looks like it's a pretty dangerous place to me. This is one angle where you can see the wharf is pretty much gone. It's hanging in the water. I don't know if you can see the fuel tank, the fuel line in this one or not, but we do have another one that shows the angle of the hose hanging in the water. And it has been determined there is fuel in the line and in the tank. Again, this is the other side looking at the wharf. It's definitely not usable. It could be very dangerous to go out
Hey,
on
Luann,
there.
what's up?
You can see the tank up on the
Yeah, you can
pump.
see the
Hi, Rob.
pump up there, and the hose is hanging down into the water. This is the aluminum ramp that is submerged. The floats, I assume, broke up or were taken over onto the beach and broken up. I don't know, Jameson might know what.
They're
happened
sitting
to
on the
floats.
boards out there where we put them.
Oh, okay, well, they're not very useful to that ramp.
Nope, they're definitely not very useful to that ramp.
You can see there's traps in the ramp. I'm not sure why they're there, but,
They blew off in that easterly that we had there on the dock. That storm really took a beat on that place. It's storm damage that never got cleaned up because the owners have been waiting to do something about it apparently.
that shows where part of the building was,
That's part of the
Destroyed.
dock. The what you see falling off was part of the dock. It's a walkway that used to go through there before that big easterly. The building piece was just a lean-to that you see.
again, many boards and dangerous conditions. And this one I didn't take, I think Sue took from the water, so I'm not sure exactly what it is we're looking at,
I think that's the walkway that used to go out to the wharf,
to the wharf.
which is no longer there.
And I don't know if you can see my cursor, is this Island Road side
Yeah,
Yes,
that's the fuel
that's
tank.
Fuel tank.
and the fuel tank? And then the line goes along the edge of this building, correct?
Yes, and that walkway that is there is pretty much full of lots of holes.
Yeah.
And here's another angle of the ramp that goes nowhere.
That's a repeat.
Yeah, again, this is the picture we saw at the beginning, showing the debris in the water and door hanging off. And here's the other side of the wharf where you can clearly see.
There's my boat in the
Just
background.
hanging there.
Clearly not an abandoned wharf if someone's using it.
This is the close-up of the other picture.
Same sort of view.
Yeah.
Can you describe the material that's over on this side, Terry, where I'm circling? What that used to be, or what it is?
I don't know what it used to be, but it's a lot of rubble right now. There's a lot of wood there, and in the pound, there was a generator floating around for a while. I think
So,
that's
I think it's still there.
still there.
There's a lot of debris that kind of washes back and forth in there.
Sometimes it's on one side, sometimes it's on the other, comes and goes with the tide. I think one concern is a lot of this getting out into the ocean.
These pictures would have been taken at a lower tide, is that right? So the tide line would be up at that debris level at high tide? Okay. Okay, and that's where we are. I do not have a photo in the slideshow of the other building. So for the purposes of this hearing, if you could just describe the conditions over on that side of the road, Terry.
The house, all the windows are broken out of it. If you look inside, you can see that the ceilings are hanging and they're blackish looking. Couldn't get too close to the house because it's surrounded by debris, and I'm not sure what's living in there, but I didn't want to get too close. I'm like kind of a rat phobia.
Can you smell and see mold, just poking your head in?
You can see, looking in the windows, you can see that it's all black, the ceiling's black, and what is the drywall that is in there that's hanging looks pretty wet.
And is that the same for the wharf building as well?
I did not go into the wharf building. I don't see a safe place to get through there. It's my understanding that if it's used, people go through the through the building itself through a door, but I could not access that.
So as far as that building, the known unsafe condition is that it's open to entry, and you've got those holes in the building and the door that's open. And are there windows that are broken out of both buildings?
I think there are any broken windows in the pound.
Unless that.
You can see the
open
doors.
door.
Yeah,
That
the
one,
doors.
I don't know if it's broken or not.
Right, the
but-
door's hanging there, but I don't think there's any broken windows. But that slider, is that slider open because it's open? It doesn't look like it's broken, it just looks like the slider's open.
And how about the foundations on either building? Any issues there that you can see with the naked eye?
You can see a hole in the side of the dock building, walking out on the walkway. You can't really see the foundation on the house, it's just surrounded by weeds and debris.
So part of a plan, if the owners were to be able to provide one, would certainly be for, a structural engineer, someone to get into each of these buildings safely and describe the conditions inside. But for our purposes tonight, the primary goal is to just get them boarded up so that people can't enter. Okay, so that is our presentation. I will stop sharing. And any other comments that Terry or the select board want to make sort of related to the conditions as you see them, sort of more factually, anything that you think was missed or should be pointed out?
Well, I'd just like to point out that we heard different stories about whether there was fuel in the tank or not. We have now determined from a certified heating technician that there is fuel. I can't remember the exact number of gallons. There was
857.
857, which is a significant amount. Plus, The pipe that goes out from the tank to the pump on the wharf is in very poor condition. It's, some of it's just steel pumping and it's exhibiting splaying. And there's certainly I would assume there's fuel in that pipe, and the affidavit we got that we submitted to court estimated, I think it was 15 gallons. And its potential, if that broke, we don't know for sure, that it could siphon all the 800 and something gallons that are in the tank into the water. And I just think that's a real critical problem that needs to be addressed, and there's no real easy way, according to our expert, to fix that. So anyways, I just wanted to emphasize that.
Okay, if there's nothing else from the board, I think at this point you'd allow the owner or their representative to speak to these issues.
That me?
That's you, Jim.
You. I want to apologize initially because I reminded my wife to remind me to put my hearing aids on before I got here, but I didn't have any trouble with Kristen, but I might with the rest of you. First, I want to say that Kristen gave us every opportunity, if I got it in right, I think, to get this done well before we're here. We talked for back in July, and we spoke with the representative of the owner, and it was my understanding that we were going to jump on it back then, but it didn't happen. Now, I've heard that the primary owner of four is 85 years old, and I think his siblings, his three brothers, are also.
They're even older.
Excuse me?
They're even older.
They're even older.
Yeah.
So, and I think communication was tough. I talked to a representative by the name of
Wigs.
Right.
talked to him before. I learned, I think 3 days ago, they wanted me to come before the board and help whatever way I can. I told him that he'd gone too far, that basically we could have done this without going through two court situations, and that what I really think what we obviously need is substance and not the discussions that has occurred thus far. And I talked to you for the first time today.
Yeah.
And found out that you actually have been working on the project. I mean,
I use the dock all year. I set at least 300 traps out of there, and I've been going out of it all year. Is it in horrible condition and something needs to be done? Absolutely.
before we go there, I want to mention that he and I actually asked to go to work on the project back in July. And the representative was aware of that.
Yes.
And
no
it was
reason.
only today that I heard about that. And what my recommendation at this point, given the fact that I think they've conceded the right to avoid either of those allegations, that we do a contract. We do a contract with him. He's willing to do it with the primary owner, and its name is Anthony Famous, and he's of the Anthony Pier 4 restaurant in Massachusetts. His father was the one that I was dealing with years ago when they wanted an in-state representative. And I was doing his annual reports for him. And after he passed, the four brothers got involved, and I decided not to continue that for reasons I can't say. but my suggestion is that we do a contract. And we do, and in the contract, it'd be with, Mr. Athenas and the other three if they need to be. But the town be the one that determines the work, that goes on it and the succession of that work. In other words, this, safety is probably the very first, the highest, concern. And then scenery obviously is an issue as well. So that would be my recommendation at this point, is that hold off on that, get a contract up if we can. I tried to call Mr. Venus today. I understand he's just back from Europe and he was very ill, but I don't know that. He didn't call me back, so but I did speak to his representative, and suggested, very strongly that we not go through the cost and the time for anybody for this, but that we resolve it through a sit down. If I don't have that contact with the owners, then we go back to what the request is for tonight. I would hope, and I didn't have the time, your opponent, your attorney gave me 38 pages to look at, on Friday, I think. And then one of the claims that she's claiming that, when I checked that out, it's 208 pages, that I haven't had a chance to look at. But I don't think we need to do this if we can get in touch and make every effort to get in touch with the owners. But if you want to go forward with it, I don't think you have a defense. I mean, I don't think my client has a defense, because they've waited too long and they had an opportunity for the last month to resolve it on the table. But I'd like to have, what's your name, James?
Jameson.
Yeah, to speak on what he's willing to do and what he's done. You can speak to the
Condition of the property.
yeah. Speak to that.
It's obviously a disaster over there. And something needs to be done. I've agreed to work with the owners and pick stuff up, get some containers in, and just start throwing stuff in the dumpsters. My primary objective was just to get the debris in the water cleared up, so it didn't float away and, become more of a problem. And Anthony got really sick, so Wick wasn't able to authorize any funding to do anything. So I haven't done anything, and I won't do anything until I receive money. And in the meantime, the fuel that's in the tank, before the last two big easterlies came through, that was removed down to the pickup line. So whatever fuel is in the line that goes out, I'd assume, whereas it was all removed from the pickup line that goes into the tank, that it's not much in the line. However, whatever's there for fuel obviously needs to be pumped out of that thing, put into ICBMs, burned in a waste oil furnace, or disposed of properly. As John said, that's a big deal. That needs to get taken care of, and we need to do something as a town to make sure we don't have an oil leak. And we need to do that probably as soon as possible. The house on the other side of the road, Wig and I plan to find a contractor, big excavator, drive that right into containers or dump trucks and have it hauled off. A lot of what needs to be taken care of, up in the pound, you can't get a barge up in there to do it. It really has to be pulled out and picked up by hand and thrown. Some of the dock can be cut down to remove that way as well. At some point, a barge will have to be contracted to come in, but there's a lot of stuff that we can do to mitigate the situation. right now. As long as these people are willing to, you know, pay to have it done. Obviously, the town.
Well, the town's not gonna have it done, it's gonna have to be the owner.
As a taxpayer, I don't wanna see my tax money wasted on this project. I also don't wanna see a massive oil leak. Cause we can't have that. This is a. But these people spend a lot of money, Anthony and whatnot, into our town, and they have since the seventies when they bought it. Yeah, they've spent a lot of money here. Paid for probably a lot of people's schooling, but what they put in as taxpayers.
What I recommend in addition to his efforts, that we contract with experts, particularly around the water situation, and the building, contract, but also we're gonna need, I think, maritime assistance.
Yeah, we'll need to have either Proc or Tibbetts or somebody come in there.
And what I would recommend.
But there's none of you guys can call one of these contractors and have this stuff cleaned up in 10 days like that document said. There's not one of you in this room that can make that happen, and I know that for a fact. So to expect an 85-year-old man and a 73-year-old representative to make this happen overnight.
And a 77-year-old.
As a town, we should probably let these people pay as much of this expense towards cleanup as they are willing to. And now that they are starting to willing to actually do something about it, because you brought them to the table. We should let them spend out of their pocket before we start dipping into the town coffers to take care of this mess.
Well, my thought would be that I'll get in touch with Athena's, tell them where I think we are and where we're going and how much, we haven't done. And tell it, and you said that you would talk to some experts. Can we give us some information on what the cost would be?
I want to talk to an expert regarding the fuel tank, and he's not willing to undertake removal of it. He feels we need to get someone who has more
Well, what we
skills
need is
and expertise.
Yeah,
Huh?
yes, what we need is.
We need to start by training.
It's gonna cost totally,
Yeah.
and it should be the owners. I think the owners are. But I don't think they're gonna have an alternative unless they wanna just sell it. And and it's my understanding there are some interested, the people who are interested in buying the property, but
All these properties that Anthony owns are being sold by a property group that Wig is working with. And I will be, if you guys don't just do it yourselves, in which case, we still need to drain the fuel. We need, even if this is into ICBM totes and we go burn it through a waste oil furnace, we need to get this fuel. Even if we don't get every last drop. We need to get as much of it as possible out of that tank. And I believe the line, whereas it was sucked from the pickup tube before the easterlies, I don't believe the line to be full. But none of us really know, so I don't think that we can say that it's full. It should be relatively empty, whereas. They held on to the trigger until bubbles just started coming out because of the level with the pickup tube, so maybe, there's not as much there, but. We need to go in with and put this in ICBM totes and go dispose of it properly, whether we send it to be burnt in a waste oil burner or send it to the incinerator for them to burn for power. I mean, it's probably not very good,
So, Kristen.
Can I ask a question, John?
Sure.
If you sign this order, all the things they're talking about have to be done within this deadline. If you let him do a contract, you don't know when you're gonna get it. But
Well-
that's been our,
well, I
That's-
don't have timeline of
Yeah.
what time to come up with that.
Let me jump back to Kristen. Kristen, I think probably all of us, including Terry up here, have some thoughts and comments about this. But I wanted to give you a chance to comment first on it. Unless you feel we can have an interchange with them, which I would like to do, but I don't want to upset the apple cart from a legal perspective here.
I have no concern with the select board speaking about that. From my perspective, it's always best to have the authority clearly defined first. And then we can work towards some sort of a settlement or a resolution with the owners if that's a viable option from there. One issue we have always had with these properties, and it goes back even to just a friendly transaction when we were trying to get easements to do the Island Road project, is it's very difficult to make contact with these people. And it sounds like even their lawyer has had trouble making contact with the person who can actually make the decisions. And so without that sort of demonstrated contact and participation on the part of the owner yet, I would not recommend holding off on issuing the dangerous building order. You could go ahead and get the order in place. Obviously, even if the town is going to do this work, it's going to take some time and some logistics to find the right people to do it. So within that same time that the town might be exploring the options for dealing with these issues, we can also be working with the owner. And if there's the ability to work this out through a contract or a consent agreement, so that we're forestalling the town's authority to go in and do this work because other promises are being made, that's certainly something we can do.
Okay. I'm gonna offer a couple of comments. I agree completely with Terry. I don't see why we can't work on a potential contract in concert with this order. I don't think they're in conflict at all. And the other concern I have is we've been at this since, when was it? June?
We started in April.
We actually started, right, informally,
Yeah.
we had a discussion with them in April. This is not like this happened overnight. And I'm very concerned that this is just, I mean, we've heard this over and over again. And I'm very concerned that if we don't take a formal action, we're just gonna lose another month. Or another 2 months. You know, I'm certainly willing to entertain an agreement, just me personally, that runs parallel with this order, but I think we need to have this order in place. Particularly as it relates to the fuel tank, I don't think, I mean, I think in that case, we're gonna have to hire an expert, because we know there's at least 300 and whatever it was, 857 gallons in there. The gauge reads that, and the sticking of the tank validates that. Yes, there is supposedly, we think, an anti-cipher valve between the pipe and the tank, but Lord knows if it works. And so, I mean, in that case, I don't think we're talking about, you know, we're talking about hiring an expert there, who can contain that if all of a sudden there's a problem when they're getting it out, in my opinion. You know, it's not just a matter of somebody with a pickup truck and a shingle hanging out of it going down and fixing the tank. So I personally would like to move ahead with this order, because I just feel like we've heard this all before. So Jeff, Sue?
Well, I think the proposal that you made is exactly what the order says. And contrary to what you said, this order does not say the town is gonna clean it up in 10 days. We're not expecting
He's
anybody.
gonna clean it up in 10 days, but these people can't clean it up in 10 days, and neither, you know.
It's, we're not asking them to. What we're telling them to do is to board it up so people will not trespass on it
Absolutely needs to be done.
and attack the fuel tank. That's what has to be done in 10 days. And then within 30 days, you have to have a contract to do exactly what you're saying.
Hang on, one at a time, okay?
Okay? So that's what the order would be. And
Okay.
that's what we're at. So I think we're in the same
I do think,
exact place.
as a landowner and taxpayer here, I do think you should move ahead with this and keep pushing it along, because as we can all see, nothing's happened.
Right.
Some of this stuff could have been picked up long ago if they. Because I've been in contact with Wiggs probably since at least the beginning of July, and without anything happening, nothing's gonna get picked up. And the fuel tank, I don't think is a big deal to just offload.
Hang on, Jeff's trying to finish.
Okay. And the other piece is that you keep referring to WIG and I want to know who is the belly button. Who is the point of contact? Who is it we talk to? Cause right now, it's you, sir. And I don't think you feel comfortable with that personally.
Well, I think we have no choice. No, I'm comfortable with it, even representing them. I think I found today for Kristen, I think she has the wrong owners. Did quite a bit of work in the Secretary of State's office, and I think they've changed the original, owners. It's online, and the owners, the Maine Coast Seafood Company is an assumed now, an assumed owner. And I think I can get that information to her soon, but I just found that this afternoon that you can actually get the corporations correctly named. And I think that was the issue that she had is that she didn't know what she's dealing with. And I think we could get that.
Kristen, would you address that? 'Cause I know that has been an issue.
Yeah, that has been an issue, and my understanding is that this was another corporation that was held by the same individuals that purchased the assets in a bankruptcy workout. So they're all the same principles underneath, no matter who we're talking about. That's why in the lawsuit, all of those individuals, successors to those corporations have been named. And why we did do as best as we could to find those individuals to notify them both of tonight and of the lawsuit itself.
Well, in any event, I'll provide you with the information that I have today. The two other corporations that are owners of the property apparently, and the original owner was only assumed lane, I didn't name, so. And of course, that was canceled way back, well, I think back in back in 2018 or 8, something like that. In any event, I just wanted to let you know that I have that information if it's helpful to you.
Thank you, but you're not suggesting that it is not the Athanas family who owns the properties through a corporate entity or otherwise?
Well, and again, I'm saying that he may be signing the document that is not an opponent at this point.
Can I suggest that maybe that's something you two can work out privately? Because you're getting into the weeds here. And-
Yeah, no, if it turns out that there's something that happened at the Secretary of State's office that's not, publicly available or that we weren't able to find, the process would be that the select board would just update the dangerous building order. And if it doesn't sound like it would be different individuals who would have the right of notice, so that would be just a pro forma sort of thing. This is sort of an action against the buildings more than it is even an action against the people who own them.
Okay, but hang on 1 minute. I want to see if Sue has anything to add before we open it up to the public.
I mean, I agree with both of you. I think we need to go through with the order because we have not been able to get a hold of the Athenas brothers. Wig says he's their representative, but he has no power to do anything. He can't order anything. He doesn't have any money to do it. That we need to go forward with this to hopefully wake them up so that they will take care of it. And, maybe they can do contracts at the same time, but I think we need to have that order.
And Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the other route that we're following in court, it could be February before we get a hearing date. Did I hear you right? We gotta get this.
Correct.
Did I hear you right on that? Now, there's a possibility we could get an injunction issued without a hearing, but you thought that was unlikely, or?
No, actually, I think there's a good possibility that there will be an injunction. The injunction would do the same thing that this dangerous building order would do. It would just have the power of a court order behind it, which gives the town further protection.
But if we don't get that, we're looking at, there's not even a hearing date until February or something crazy.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. So that's all the more reason why I think we gotta keep running on this path first. So Kristen, I'm gonna open it up to public comment unless you have something you wanna add.
No public comment would be appropriate.
Okay, and could I ask you to please be brief? So, Scott, you had your hand up?
I have no doubt, everything makes sense to me, except I think it's very unlikely for us to expect as a town that the owners are gonna come through on any of this. They haven't done it before, they haven't done it now. So here's my question. At the end of the time, you make this goes through, they don't do anything. You guys go in, the town goes in and cleans it up. And then they put the cost of cleaning the town is taken and puts it on top of the taxes, which I understand is the idea on this. They don't do anything else then, and then what is the next step of the town? My concern on this is, I worry about the town getting involved with this and getting liability to this place in the future on this. If they're if you begin to go ahead and do the work on this and that they don't do anything and the town does it, ends up doing the work, I'm worried that the town is gonna end up owning the liability of the problem with this, because I think there's a lot of liability on this. But we don't really know what the hazardous waste is in there, we don't know if there's asbestos, we don't know if there's lead, we know there's fuel. So the question I have is, if we go ahead with this, what does this do in the next step if they don't come up, other than the town going in and paying for the cleanup?
Kristen, you wanna take a stab at that?
Yes. So, I'm not sure that I would envision that the town would, at taxpayer expense, clear the properties entirely, but would probably more surgically address the more pressing issues like the war, boarding up the buildings, et cetera. So there's gonna be some cost inherent in that, and that would get assessed, like I said, as a special tax against the property. That tax sits there. The town doesn't acquire any, possession or title to the property, but that tax is going to sit on the property. And if it remains unpaid, just like any other tax bill, eventually it goes through the tax foreclosure process. And even acquiring the property through the tax foreclosure process, if it goes that far, and that's about 2 years after the tax is assessed. So we're talking, 2.5, 3 years from now, the town doesn't acquire liability for the property until it goes in and starts sort of making changes to the property or doing other things on the property. What would normally happen is that the town would put the properties up for sale and sort of shunt that liability to whoever buys these properties. And at no point in that process would take on any of the risk associated with these properties or any of the hazardous materials or anything.
I'm just thinking of Warren and on Route 90 with the gun group, when the town had big problems with doing that, and then also the place in Wiscasset with the old fuel tanks next to the high school. And both places, the towns got very nervous that they were gonna get stuck into the dealing with this issue.
What you don't want is to acquire a property that has no market value or market interest. And those other examples that you gave kind of fall in that range. These properties seem like they would have some interest to a purchaser. And that purchaser, realizing they're getting a good deal, would also have to deal with the consequences of whatever hazardous materials or dangerous building conditions or anything are left on the property.
Okay, anybody else from the public wanna comment? Or,
Yeah, my name's Eric Curtis, I've got a pretty extensive maritime background. I'd like to, is there any interest in selling this property down there? By the owner? I'm gonna ask
they
that
have,
question.
they have been asked that question.
Yeah.
And the general answer, this is not by the town, they haven't been asked that question. The general answer was from Wig, and who knows how much authority he has, is yes. And I think, Jameson's right, they are in the process and have been for several years of liquidating their other properties or having them developed. And, so I think the general answer is yes, and of course, as
Would you like his email
as,
Yeah.
as someone once said, everything's for sale. Just a matter of price. So, other comments? Go ahead.
I'd like to urge the select board to go ahead with the process is proposed today. I'm Julia O'Brien, and I live on Seal Cove Road, which is the driveway that is immediately adjacent to the house that is falling apart. There is nothing in the Venus's history, either in Massachusetts or in South Charleston, that leads me to believe that they're going to do anything of their own free will and volition. I think they need to be pressed and pressed hard. I think they have a long record of stalling, of obfuscating, of putting nice people in awkward positions to describe what their position is. And that they are totally untrustworthy. And I also feel that it's inappropriate to say, they're 86 years old, because I'm 86 years old. And I can still sign my name and do what is called for to resolve a property. So this is not a group that deserves any sympathy at all. They're wealthy individuals. They are well versed in how to play things out, to delay things, and to be uncaring about the impact that they have on a community. You can find documentation for that simply Googling them and looking at various properties that they have been involved in. So I strongly urge the select board to take this position and to move forward with as much sense of purpose as you can.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have a question,
You introduce yourself.
oh, I'm sorry, Paula Atkins.
Yeah, just for the-
I live on McBride.
Yeah.
I am, under the impression that the select board has contacted the EPA at some point about this. Is that accurate or
Not
not?
EPA, but the main DEP.
Oh.
Well, Selectwood and the code officer did, but yes.
Okay, and I'm just curious, what was the outcome of that? If you can,
They kind of shoveled me around, and I finally ended up with the fire marshal. And the fire marshal did come down and look at the tank and went back to his office. They did send a notice to Anthony. And he was supposed to send back I can't remember the name of it, a settlement of deficiencies, what they would do to fix it, but they ignored that letter too. So nothing has been
so
done.
another disappearing contact, okay, thank you.
John, then Sally.
Thankful for McBride Drive. I'd like to comment I echo Julia O'Brien's elegant words about putting people in Jameson, Mr. Strong in awkward positions. I think it's very difficult. But I also caution the town that the cost to clean this up in any substantial way will result in basically zero value to this property. Someone will, if they're responsible for cleaning up the property, they will be hiring a very capable excavator to remove damaged pilings, concrete that reaches out a long way. I mean, just guessing, it's $100,000 to start. And will somebody pay even $1 for the property, knowing that they have to clean it up? Well, they would also be paying the tax bill. So they pay $1 to the family that owns it, but in so doing, they would be responsible for whatever taxes the town had assessed on it. So let's say the town boards it up and Jameson is capable of getting the pallet jacks out of the pound, et cetera. And his cost is $20,000, and there's $20,000 spent on getting the fuel out. You know, those are the kinds of numbers that can get pretty big, pretty quick. But there's two properties there.
Three.
Yeah. The little island out further.
The little point across the way. Yeah.
So those are valuable, so, but it's difficult to assess the various costs and values.
Yeah, it puts us in an awkward position. Other comments from the public? Anybody on Zoom want to comment?
Did Sally still wanna?
Oh, I'm sorry, Sally,
I
yeah.
just wanted to follow up on what you said, if the fuel ended up in the water, who would be called? Do you think?
Well, the US government's responsible for any water that goes in the.
I mean, who would actually do we have a local, that comes with the,
Clean harbor possibly,
yeah.
They would be contracted by the
I mean, it's-
federal government.
It seems like somebody would be, anxious to see that this does not happen.
One would think that.
One would think.
Even if the fuel is the majority that can be sucked out of that tank with a transfer pump is moved into IBCM totes and can be burnt somewhere. If there is an accident, another nor'easter that comes through, the fuel that's gonna go everywhere it's gonna be a lot less, even if it does happen. And as a town, we all kind of need to make sure that one way or another. Whether we do it, whether you can find experts, if we were to empty this tank into boats, it would be done much the same way, with a pump into tanks,
Yeah,
and then you've got what's left, obviously, John, someone special is gonna have to come in to remove that, but
right.
in the meantime, while all that gets lined up. And we do have a nor'easter that comes through, I just assume not see the environmental impact.
Yeah, I think getting the fuel out of the tank is not the complicated issue. It's getting it out of the pipe and as you say, the residual is gonna be left and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So so did you get your
Well,
question answered?
we once had whatever the word is, we had a tank of fuel that became unusable. It was, contaminated, thank you. And, we went into a place and they removed it all. This was like a 60-gallon tank. I'm not sure if it was full at the time, and they processed it back into usable fuel. There must be people who do this.
Yeah, actually, the heating technician that looked at it thought there was probably some value in that fuel, potentially.
There is, because it's been used recently and it's diesel, so it probably hasn't gone bad, but there's probably some horrible
Yeah.
sludge in the bottom.
Yeah, this was diesel, but maybe that was.
You had algae that grew in the center, didn't you? That was an algae issue.
Okay, anybody on Zoom want to comment before we close the hearing?
This is Kevin Gordon. I'm a property owner that adjoins the buildings in question on Point View. I would urge the board to proceed, and I echo Julie O'Brien's comments about the fact that I participated in these meetings with the owner's representative and nothing has happened, and I believe this is just constant delay. So, thank you.
Okay, anyone else on Zoom?
Yeah,
Lynn?
hi, this is Lynn Canavan, and I also own property on Seal Cove, which is again abuts the property. I again echo the comments, and I again urge the selectmen to just go forward strongly and not not acquiesce to the delay tactics.
Okay, last call.
Yes, this is James
Okay.
Poulos.
Go ahead, James.
I also am about the property on Seal Cove Road, echoing my neighbors, Julia, Kevin, and Lynn, and encouraging the board to please move forward with as much speed as possible to address this issue, which has been a longstanding problem. And clearly we have an uncooperative sort of property owner that is directly behind my house. So I thank the board for addressing this. And that's all. Thank you.
No. Okay, anybody else? Terry, anything you want to add?
No.
Kristen, anything you want to add? I know we're gonna talk about the order after, but anything you want to add during the hearing?
No,
Okay, then I'll declare the hearing closed. And we're gonna move on to considering the draft order. Chris, and I had one question. You said at 14 days, and my copy says 10 days. In number 3, number number 3.
okay, I'm sorry, it was my error when I spoke.
So which is it you're recommending?
That is up to the board. I think that 10 days is probably so short as to be impractical. Now that I hear a little bit more about what's entailed. But I wouldn't go much beyond 14 days. These are extremely pressing issues. And I think with the right amount of money, a contractor could be found to address, especially the wharf and the fuel.
Okay, so, just process wise, if we do approve this order as is, or with changing it to 14 days, how quickly is it out the door and how does that happen? Most
So the order
efficient.
would,
I don't wanna lose 3 days while it's getting out the door.
no, there's no getting it out the door. Once it's approved tonight, it's effective. It gets recorded by the clerk. In the official municipal records. Often, although I don't think the statute requires it, often we record it in the registry of deeds as well, just in case the property changes hands.
Yeah,
So that is automatic.
okay, and so the clock starts ticking when we sign it, not when they receive it.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add about regarding the order? Any changes based on what you heard tonight, or?
I just note that there was a misspelling in Athanas in the third whereas paragraph, so I've corrected that here on my screen.
We don't have to sign this?
You will sign it, but these are Scrivener's errors that I will correct, and then we can just replace that first affected page.
But on this form, we don't have to sign it as a board?
That looks like Hannah.
No,
Which-
Hannah's
Right.
gonna sign it just to attest that it was approved, but all I need from you is a vote.
Okay, so questions on process or? Okay, let's deal with the 10 versus 14. I agree with the 14. And that's what Kristen said to begin with. So we just a little friendly amendment to make it 14. So with that change and the Scrivener error corrected, is there a motion to adopt this order, this draft order?
I move that we adopt the dangerous building order for 93 and 98 Island Road, South Thomaston, Maine, with the corrections, 14 days and the spelling of the last name.
I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion? I did have one question. So we're talking about 3 parcels here, but only 2 addresses. Is that because the piece across the pond entrance has the same address? You know, Terry?
What do you mean by the same address? Like nine?
Well, we got 3 parcels, but only 2 addresses.
But I don't think there's anything
This is structure.
on the third, that third parcel out there.
So we're not dealing with anything. I didn't know whether the pound went over and attached over there or something like that. We'd have
It's
to
just
get
that
on.
little piece of.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Yeah.
On
Okay.
the commitment book, it says, has a different
I think,
address.
the properties are all described in one deed, I think.
Well, they're taxed
There.
separately.
Did you get 3?
But the one with the house goes right down to the bridge, correct?
The second
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
Oh, cause, no, it's the third one is the little island that comes, there's
Yeah,
the dock, the island, and then the house that. like
that
you
goes
say,
down to the
stretches
bridge.
To the
Yeah.
beach as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So with can we, have one conversation, please? So, further discussion. All those in favor, Sue,
Aye.
Jeff? Aye. John, aye. So Hannah, you need to do what you need to do there, and obviously we will. Gonna rely on Jim, their representative, to do that, or how's that?
Well, I'm gonna be making my best efforts to communicate with him. Soon as I can. I'll try tomorrow and I'll try the next day. I would love to find out just where he is in this thing.
Okay, and Kristen, do you feel the need that Hannah needs to send anything out, or? Or you?
The statute, right, the statute requires us to serve this, once approved on the owners. And to do so sort of like you would a court action. If they are all truly represented by Attorney Strong, I would just see if he might waive that service. And, sort of avoid those sheriff service costs that would otherwise still be passed on, to them as the property owners. So he and I can talk about that once he feels a little bit more secure in who he is representing.
Okay,
I'm working on getting email to this gentleman, and hopefully I can, you can send me your final draft, I'll get that to him as quickly as I can, and we'll have a discussion.
well, and Hannah, once you attest to it, you can get Jim a copy as well too, so he has the attested copy and the date. Okay, all right. I just don't wanna get hung up on some stupid little process issue that we didn't do something. Okay. So, Kristen, we have one little item to deal with, shouldn't take long at all, and then we're gonna come back for an executive session or potentially executive session with you. So do you just wanna hang here for a few minutes, or?
Yes,
Okay. Adjustments to the agenda, Hannah has asked that we could take up a couple of, thanks, Jim, a couple of abatements at the end of the session. They should be quick and just procedural. Penny is here representing the Library and Community Facilities Committee, and they're requesting approval to expending $5,000 of donated funds to provide engineering services at the Guilford Butler Schools, so that in concert with the architectural services. So is there a motion to that effect, or questions, or?
To spend it, to spend the 5,000?
Yeah, up to. For the engineering services.
We didn't already approve it.
We approved the architectural, up to 15 for the architectural. This is up to additional services for engineering.
I'll make a motion that we approve the expenditure of $5,000 of donated funds to provide engineering services at the former Guilford Butler School.
Second. You want to add anything, or are you all okay? Then fine. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, Sue?
Aye.
Jeff? Aye. John, I just realized I don't have to do that unless one's on Zoom. I'm so used to doing it. Okay, so that's all set. So is there a motion to enter executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 504056E to discuss a legal matter with our town attorney?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. And
Everybody knows.
we gotta get people off Zoom, not Kristen.